Amos was a shepherd and a fig farmer living in Tekoa, near the border dividing Judah from the northern kingdom of Israel. King Jeroboam II reigned in the northern part of Israel, and it was a time of prosperity. The economy grew stronger, the military was triumphant, and the king was very popular. But as the nation grew richer and militarily stronger, their faith in God grew weaker. Under Jeroboam II, the nation began worshiping and bowing to Canaanite idols, and the poor were treated unjustly. Amos heard the call to prophesy to his people, and so he left Tekoa and went to Bethel, a town with a large synagogue in Northern Isreal. Our lesson today is a part of the poems of Amos and a part of his message to Israel and its leaders. The prophet Amos starts this lesson warning the people of Israel. These people thought that God was coming to bring blessings and deliverance because they thought of themselves as the covenant people, and they thought we're saved because of that. But Amos wanted them to know that their hearts were blinded and that God was coming as a judge, not a savior. As a prophet, Amos sees his job to warn society that some may be religious and even long for the coming of the Lord without realizing that his arrival will present for them the greatest problem in their lives: judgment for their wrongdoing. In the midst of acting, sometimes we cannot see our own wrong. Amos saw the real Israel and knew that they had violated the covenant so much that judgment was inevitable. Running from one danger would only lead to another danger. Judgment was inescapable. Now, remember, this is a poem, so the phrase "with no brightness in it" is a literary allusion to the glory of God. Israel was going to face dark and bleak times without the hand of God to save them. Speaking God's message, Amos poetically pronounced God's displeasure. Amos particularly focused on their perversion of the sacred festivals. These festivals were meant to celebrate God's blessings. The sacrificial system was Yahweh's way of dealing with human sin. It was God's way of developing and continuing a personal, loving, trusting relationship with his people. Israel had not only turned these God-ordained celebrations and sacrifices into mere ritual and form, but even merged them with pagan practices. Sometimes we find it difficult to stand against the crowd and to speak the unvarnished truth in a society that doesn't want to hear it. Amos is telling Israel that these celebrations and rituals are mere noise, and God rejects these purposeless events and celebrations. Even sacred and glorious music without the proper motive is farce, hypocrisy, an abomination to God. God is looking at our hearts, at our motives. It is the motivation from which we do these rituals and make these sacrifices that is important to God. For modern Christians, it is important not to let our Christian observances and practices be mindless, meaningless motions. Amos is telling Israel and modern Christians that we need to focus on the real purpose behind our religious practices so that we can grow in our knowledge and in our love of God. God desires his people to focus on who he is, not on certain worship days, ceremonies, or rituals. They aren't that important. True faith is what we are, not what we do. But who we are will be seen in what we do. Why we do it is important. So, after warning the people who thought of themselves as saved because they were the covenant people, Amos ends his lesson with the most famous quote that we can read from him. He says, "Let judgment roll down like water and righteousness as a mighty stream." In essence, Amos is calling the judgment and righteousness of God upon these people. He calls on all of us to look in the mirror to see if we are real
are just going through the motions. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.